Okay, so another reason why excessive wealth concentrated in the hands of too few people is bad for society, aside from just the resource distribution, is that it gives that small group of people too much political
An
power.
extreme amount
And
of
you
power.
yeah, and so therefore they get to write the laws to help them. So that's what we're seeing. We're
Think the
seeing
Koch brothers.
exactly.
I mean, those guys own this country.
Yeah, exactly. And we're
The
just
who brothers?
The
Coke.
Koch brothers.
Coke.
Coke, is that how you say it?
Yeah, but they're Cox.
K-O-C-H.
They're Cox, but it's pronounced Coke.
So
But
they're a bunch of dicks, huh?
they're a bunch of dicks. And so,
'Cause
you
they're
know,
rich? No.
I mean, whether you want to talk about, I mean, wealth aside, I mean, the concentration of power and influence is not healthy for democracy, and it's undermining our democracy. I mean, these voter restriction laws, these are being paid for.
What voter restriction laws?
Are you serious right now?
Yeah, I'm very serious.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh,
I don't know about voter restriction laws either.
Mike.
What are you talking about?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm shocked that you guys aren't aware that there's been a wave of, conservative legislatures across the country that are passing, laws to basically restrict access to the franchise.
How?
And
They
in,
make it
in
more
many
difficult
ways,
for people to qualify to vote. You have to pass tests. You have to, have all sorts of identification.
Only
and
thing
not
I've
everyone-
heard is you need like a California
Yeah,
ID.
you
I mean,
need
not California, you need a state ID.
identification.
no,
Well,
it's
yeah,
it
we're not
varies.
talking about California.
And it also it hasn't happened in California. It's also disqualifying people from voter rolls. It's like disenfranchisement of
How
former
so?
felons. I
Well,
just named like three things. Like
No, you just said what it does. You didn't say how.
no, because you disenfranchise former felons by not allowing felons to vote after.
But that's always been the
No,
case.
that's not always been the case, and it's not across the board now.
What, you think felons should be able to vote?
I think, yeah. Why? I mean,
That-
once you've paid your dues to society, why shouldn't you be? And you're in society, and you're a part of society.
Part
You're a
of being
stakeholder in
convicted felon is
society.
losing your right to vote.
Exactly.
No, it is not. That's not actually a fact. That it happens in some places and not all the time. Like people can regain their rights to vote. It's not a universal thing. And we're going backwards. I mean, what about whether you haven't heard of these individual voting rights infringements? I mean, I'm sure you've heard that they struck down a major part of the Voting Rights Act last year.
And what? They're bringing back Jim Crow now?
I mean, basically, in essence,
So
piece by piece, they are.
Where are you seeing this?
We're seeing it all across the country in so many different ways.
How?
I mean, I felt like I just gave you a litany of the
No,
ways
you
they're striking down.
You told me that convicted felons are having their right to vote taken away from them.
No, I named three things. One is I named three things that are restricting voting rights and are in disproportionately impacting our community. One is the disenfranchisement of felons. Two is the requirement of photo ID for persons who.
Why is that bad?
Okay, I'll come back to that. Three is just kicking people off of voter rolls, people who are legitimate, who are registered. I mean, they've been kicking people off voter rolls and just arbitrarily saying, you know what, you can't vote. They had a black woman. She was 96 or something. She went to go vote, and they were like, oh no, you're not registered. She's been voting since 1920, since women got the vote, damn near, and she's like, what is going on? So these are very high profile cases. I'm shocked that you're not aware of it. But the original point is that people like the Koch brothers, who have billions and billions of dollars, they're buying legislatures. They're pushing these policies that are protecting their interests and hurting ours. And so money is tied to the way our democracy functions or doesn't function. And it's not functioning for a lot of people.
I do agree with that.
It's not functioning for a lot of people. It's not functioning for most of us.
So what is it about driver's license? Why I don't get what's so hard about getting a form of ID?
Well,
why is that?
If you're an able-bodied, literate person or who speaks English, it's not. But
why would you want somebody who wasn't an able-bodied English-speaking person?
Because they're a citizen and they have a right to vote.
No, not if
but
they don't speak English.
How do you know they're a citizen if they don't have any ID?
Speaking English is not because lots of people. Okay, I'll give you an example. My great-grandmother, who voted every day she possibly could in her life, was born in 1904 at home, as was my grandmother, who's still alive. She was born she's 91, so what year was that? 1923, at home. She doesn't have a birth certificate. You mean over time they were able to get IDs, but IDs weren't required for them to be able to vote. And so the people who are most likely to not have IDs are people of color, people who are poor, people who live in rural areas, people who are senior citizens, people who are disabled.
How hard is it to get an ID?
Again, you're speaking from somebody for whom you're
You
able-bodied.
need an
and
ID to get alcohol. You need an ID to get medicine. You need an ID to use your goddamn credit card.
these people don't have credit cards. We're talking about people who don't even have access
Then they
to
shouldn't
banking.
vote. If they can't exist in a modern society, then maybe they shouldn't vote.
But Damon,
the
that's
problem-
terrible.
one of the
Democracy, everyone has the. If you're a citizen, you have the right to vote. That's kind of like the very most basic
If
foundational
they
principle.
can't prove their citizenship, then they can't vote.
I don't see having requiring an ID as
But that's not the only means.
But
Of,
that's
that's
not
not
the-
the only means of voter restriction. The
Right.
problem with the voter restriction laws is that it's a cocktail of
Exactly.
policies designed to make it difficult for
For-
the underclass
Is
to
that-
exercise their
So
franchise.
is that any different than allowing a flood of illegal immigrants into the country, so that eventually they'll join the they'll eventually join the Democratic side of the voting bloc? I mean, is that any
Well,
different?
that's a completely separate discussion.
No, it's not. It's
well, it is, and it's also.
Well, no, you're talking about stuff happening bit by bit. You're talking about that these voter restriction laws, the ID.
This is a funny show. Hilarious.
Anyway,
the
let's-
ID to prove citizenship. The ID to prove citizenship.
Hold on, I got something for Dino. Oh, wait a minute. No, I don't. Never mind.
Yeah, you ain't got nothing. For
You
me.
can prove citizenship. There are ways to prove citizenship without a picture ID. There are ways to prove citizenship without a picture ID, and people do it all the time. Social security cards, they don't have your picture on them.
And I mean, we're talking about the ID, but that, like I said, that's not the
That's
only
just
way.
one-
That's
yeah,
just
exactly.
One method that they're using. They're also redistricting voting districts to.
always
to,
have.
Yeah, they've always done that, but it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's fair. I mean,
Right.
gerrymandering is done for a purpose.
But it's gotten more
If you
concentrated.
look at the voting districts, it's not. It would make sense if it was just a grid, a square grid, like a checkerboard.
Well,
right?
yeah,
but
it
it's
would.
absolutely not. And the reason they call it gerrymandering is because some of these districts are shaped like friggin' lizards, right? Because
But-
of the ridiculous
But
turns that
it
they
happens. It happens with both sides of the political spectrum. Whenever they get into power, if they're in power, by the time the census takes place, they gerrymander based on their political strength.
But the point that I think
I think
Amber and
I
are
think
making is that
gerrymandering
it's
is wrong.
It's the conservative legislatures that are pushing
No,
these
it's
laws
not.
through.
Yes,
it's
it
not
is.
happening in California.
Yes, it
It's
is.
not
The
happening
Oh,
in New York.
I'm sorry. I thought we
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about gerrymandering.
Well, we're talking about
No, wait,
voting
no, wait,
restrictions.
time out. When you were talking about gerrymandering, I was responding to you. I was responding to the gerrymandering issue.
Yeah.
Who's Jerry?
You want to talk about each of these policies in a vacuum, but the point that I'm trying to make to you is that they're not in a vacuum. There's a cocktail of different
Exactly.
policies.
They
that
reinforce
these
each
conservative
other.
legislatures are using to restrict the voting rights of the underclass. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly.
So yeah, you can pick any particular policy that they're using and defend it, which is why exactly they've passed, because
Exactly.
they do exactly what you're doing. They pick
Exactly.
piecemeal. Well, this one's okay because what's wrong with requiring people to have a driver's license?
Right.
And well, this one's okay because what's wrong with gerrymandering? It
Right.
happens everywhere. And
Right.
this one's okay because what's wrong with restricting early voting? And this one's okay
Exactly.
with what's wrong with doing away with same-day voter registration? And yet, each and every one of those policies in a vacuum may not be harmful, but when you combine them into a cocktail
Right.
that is clearly designed to
And they're only
so-
going in one way. It's only going in the direction of restricting voting.
You think it's okay to register the day that
There's
of the
plenty
election?
of places that
Absolutely.
do
What's wrong
that.
with that?
There are plenty of places. There's
Well,
nothing
let's
wrong with
let's
that.
Move on.
There's
We're not,
absolutely nothing
we're
wrong with
talking in
that.
circles here.
But I mean, the thing is, if that applies to everybody, if nobody can register early or late or whatever, I mean, everybody is supposed to register at the same time. So if everyone knows that, it's not like elections sneak up on you. There's plenty of advance. So why don't you just register when you're supposed to? I mean,
Again, we're defending each
but
thing
if you-
piecemeal.
you can't defend that. If you don't follow the rules, there's no excuse for that. Then if you didn't register when you were supposed to, then you just don't get to vote because you didn't register when you were supposed to. That's not attacking anybody except for people who don't know how to follow fucking rules.
The problem is that it's the people with the least resources for whom following
things
all of these rules are
more
more
difficult.
But the people with the least resources have been able to follow the rules before. Why can't they do it now?
They
Because
mostly-
there's more and more and more fucking rules.
Exactly.
You're poor, you can't register on time. That's bullshit.
No,
I don't buy that.
Again, that's one thing that cumulatively impacts.
So,
and yes,
okay, so
I mean,
because you're poor, you can't register on
No,
time.
that's-
you
guys
you
are-
can't
that's-
get your ID.
no,
Right.
You,
no.
It's not a matter
no.
of can't.
Ger-
You guys are-
gerrymandering
you guys are
happens for
simplifying
whoever's
it.
in power.
You guys are so oversimplifying
Well, because it
it.
is simple.
No, it isn't.
It is simple.
It is not
Get a
simple.
goddamn ID.
No.
That's easy.
There's freaking think tank. There's think
If
tanks
you
and
can't
policy
get, if you
experts.
can't get an ID, then you can't. You're too stupid to vote.
That, but you don't have to have a fucking
If you
specific.
can't read English, who the hell? How do you know who to vote for? How do you even know what the laws mean?
Oh my gosh, I can't.
All right, we're done.
So done. So, but anyway,
So
if the people who are negatively impacted by these rules are arguing for them, then we're fucking. Now this is hopeless.
How am I negatively?
This is hopeless.
Wait a minute.
I'm not.
How am I negatively impacted?
I have an ID.
I got an ID.
I vote
I know
every
what
time.
Where voting restriction is not in place. You're in California.
I can move to Texas and
Move
register
to
to
North
vote.
Carolina, bro.
I can move to North Carolina and register to vote.
Exactly.
That
I
doesn't
know
mean
how to
you're-
get. I
that
know how
doesn't
to
mean
get an
you're gonna
ID.
That doesn't mean you're going to be allowed to. And I don't just because you in particular individually aren't being disenfranchised doesn't mean that you're not being impacted by the policy changes that are happening in a country where more and more of your community, and people who look like you are being disenfranchised.
And I just have one last thing to say on it, and I'm done. Really, because I am done. But my point is that, yeah, you're right. Anyone can get an ID with enough effort and enough time and enough money. You can get an ID, right? Anyone can
Register to vote.
Register to vote.
On
Anyone
time.
can follow any of these rules with enough resources and enough time and enough money and enough information to do it. But as a practical matter, everyone knows, everyone who's implementing these policies know that the people with the lowest resources do not do that to the same
Well, then you
degree
know what?
as
That's their
everyone else.
fault.
Of
No,
course
but-
it is.
but on a
Of course it is,
prac-
but we're not assigning fault.
But
We're-
on a practical matter, Uncle Powers is right. There's the practicality
Yeah,
of
don't
it.
you dare call
but-
me Mike.
Sorry. There's the practicality of it.
Uncle Powers!
Pulling back the curtain.
Fight the powers.
No, there's the practicality of it, right? Which he's absolutely right about. But there's also the principle. Our democracy and your right to vote is not based on how much money you have or whether you're smart enough to get a fucking ID or whether you speak English. Those are not
Should be.
requirements but they're not. The Constitution does
Should
not
be.
require you to have those things in order
Should.
to fucking vote. And so then let's talk about a
Yeah,
constitutional
Let's
amendment.
go back to the 1700s. Where
Yeah.
the
I
only
thought-
people
I thought
who
we
were
were
let's
done.
rich
just let's
white
just bring
men.
back the fucking
Right?
poll
I
tax.
thought we were done. Antoine Dobson's in the news
Oh
again.
Lord.
Well, is he being prevented from voting?
Oh my God.